Hello, and welcome to InFocus, a video series where we spotlight the solutions and innovations Trimble is bringing to the construction industry. My name is Rob Miller. Today, I'm joined by Duane Gleason, Vico Product Manager from Trimble. Duane has joined us to talk about Flowline planning. Duane, thanks for being here.
Good to be here, Rob.
So I'm going to admit that Flowline planning is completely new to me. Can you talk a little bit about where this methodology came from?
Sure. So Flowline is actually over 130 years old. It started in Europe, over in Poland, back in the late 1890s. There was some research that was done on it and some construction projects over there. But it really didn't start to gain traction here in the United States until around 1929, when the Empire State Building was constructed. That project was really notable because they went from sketch to occupancy on over 100 floors in just 18 months. And they did it through Flowline planning and through production control. So that's really when it made its entry here into the United States. And then I would say in about the last 7 years, since BIM has really taken off and models are becoming more available, that's when we've started to see it more and more prevalent here in the current construction industry.
Okay, so help me understand a little bit about how Flowline works.
So the first part of any Flowline schedule is the locations. The whole planning concept of Flowline revolves around the idea of actually carving out the physical locations of the project where you're going to build. We call that the location breakdown structure, the LBS. So you can add that LBS into your model and those locations. And what we do is we actually quantify all of the elements that are in those locations. So we start to find out exactly how much work is going to be within each location by quantity. And then we start to tie that to the task or the construction activity that's going to happen in that location.
So we start with locations, we add our quantities, and then we focus on the tasks. What's the real benefit of driving from a location to begin with for this schedule?
Once we get our task is we start to add the crews in there.
Okay.
And we would add those crews based on the actual composition that they need to work in. So for example, most activities in construction are not done independently. It's going to be a group of guys, maybe 2 lead men and a helper or something like that. And when we do this location-based planning, we can look at precisely how much crew is going to be necessary in any one given location, and we can start to balance those crews out or optimize them, as we would call it, to find the right flow through each and every location of the project. And really, we start to define the cadence of how the parade of trades is going to move through the building.
So Duane, you mentioned at the in the opening that you've seen an increase in the adoption of this type of planning with the adoption of BIM. Is it model-based then?
It is model-based, but it can also be non-model-based. So we kind of favor the model-based because it really automates everything. It's a lot easier to get your quantities by location, get your locations, kind of link up all your assemblies and components, but it's definitely possible to do a full manual flow line. By that I mean that you could create your location breakdown and just take pure guesses as to the duration of each location. Or you could even do manual takeoff. So say, for example, you wanted to just get a scale rule and some pencil and paper, derive your own quantities, and then type those in by location. It's certainly possible to use that manual method as well.
Okay, give me some examples of how this has been implemented in the real world.
Well, most of my exposure to this Flowline started about 7 years ago. Out in California, there was a big code change that came in because of some seismic issues. There were some brand new seismic requirements, very specifically targeted at some of the healthcare facilities. And at that time, it became apparent to a couple of the owners that they were going to have to build brand new hospitals. It was too prohibitive to try and retrofit what they had. And those hospitals had to be open by a certain date because of the way the code was written. So we were actually, we were contacted by some of those owners and asked to assist with the planning. And so we made these Flowline schedules and we optimized them to make them, like I said, more harmonious, kind of finding that right pace. And I actually remember one of the projects I was involved in when we first got there, they were looking at a peak trade resource of about 600 guys. And when we did the Flowline method and we started to implement some of those lean principles, getting rid of some of the starts and stops and stuff like that, on the one project we took a crew of 600 down to around 400 guys, and then we implemented weekly production control out there. So making sure that they were actually hitting all the marks and hitting all the completions that were necessary according to plan. And those projects all came in on time, and they were able to open up before the code had changed on them. So
now we've talked a little bit about Document Controller in another one of these videos. Very similarly, this is a subset of what the Vico suite offers, correct?
This is about 20–25% of what the overall Vico suite is capable of, and this is the part that's really focused in on scheduling.
So Duane, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you talking to us a little bit about Flowline planning. And it seems that this is a real disruptive way in doing scheduling, but in a good way, for sure. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you with us today.
Yeah, for sure.
For more information about Vico and Flowline planning, check out the website or contact your local BuildingPoint representative. From all of us here at BuildingPoint, thank you and have a good day.